Hello. So today we will be talking about income from other sources, which is the final head of income. So, introduction and basis of charge, section 56, the residuary head. Any income which is not excluded from the total income and is also not chargeable under the four heads of income, which is salary, house property, business or profession, capital gains, is taxable under this head. Basically, any income which doesn't belong to any of these heads come under other sources of income. Purpose: this section acts as a catch-all or residuary head, ensuring no taxable income escapes the tax net. So if a source of income doesn't come under any of the four heads of income, then it will be fallen into the other sources of income and hence will be taxed. For example, interest from bank accounts, lottery winnings, family pension, gifts. So let's take lottery winnings for example. They don't come under the four heads of income which I have mentioned earlier. They come under the other source of income as a default. Income specifically taxable, section 56, part 2, that is dividends. So, dividends was not initially taxed, but this is a change from the old law where dividends were tax exempt from the investor. So, basically, dividends were not taxed, and the investor could keep all the dividends to themselves without any tax on it. So, taxability: dividends received from a company are fully taxable in the hands of the investor at their applicable slab rates. So, dividends are taxable under certain percentage of the amount they earn. So, TDS, tax deducted as source, at 10% is deducted by the company if the dividend amount exceeds 5,000 in a financial year. So if you're earning anywhere above 5,000 rupees in a financial year through dividends particularly, then 10% of it is deducted as tax. Income specifically taxable, section 56 part 2, which is winnings from lotteries, etc. So taxability: winnings from lotteries, crossword puzzles, horse races, card games, gambling, or betting are taxable at a flat rate of 30%. So these are taxed under other source of income at a rate of 30% from any sort of betting. Crucial point: no expenditure or loss can be set off against this income. That means any loss that you incurred or any expense that you incurred while winning this sort of lottery or betting, that is, let's take for example, if you bought a ticket for lottery for 200 bucks and you win about 10,000 rupees, then your whole amount is taxed on that 10,000 rupees and that 200 rupees is not deducted from it. So it is taxed on a gross basis. So that whole 10,000 is taxed, but the 200 is not deducted from it. So that is it.
Yes, thank you, Sanjana. Moving on to the next slide, that is the tax on gifts. Under the Income Tax Act, any gift that you receive after a certain limit is taxable. Firstly, talking about the total cash gifts that you receive. If it exceeds 50,000 rupees in an year, the entire amount of the cash gift received becomes taxable. The same applies to movable property. Giving example of movable property such as jewelry, painting, shares, etc. If the fair market value of the entire movable property again exceeds 50,000, the whole value is taxable. And for immovable property such as land or building, if the entire stamp duty value of the immovable property exceeds 50,000, the entire property becomes taxable. Now, giving an example to understand this better, if I say receive 60,000 from a friend, and uh, and that is taxable, right? And I'm not paying tax the on just the 50,000 that I'm receiving. I'm paying tax on the entire 60,000, which exceeds 50,000 that I'm paying tax on. Moving on to the next slide. exempted gifts and the relative clause. So when we receive gifts, not every time that the situation is that every gift is taxable. There are few exemptions to this act. Firstly, gifts received from a relative are completely exempt with no upper limit. There's no exceeding limit to this. They're also exempt if they're received on occasion of marriage or under inheritance or will. Thirdly, gifts from local authorities, registered funds, foundations, universities, or hospitals are also exempt. Now, the question arises, who qualifies as a relative? Here, this includes your spouse, your parents' siblings, your children, grandchildren, grandparents, and even the spouse of these people. All these people come under the clause of relative. That's why here the relative clause is very important as it defines who, from whom the gift is received, if it's taxable or not. Again, giving an example, if I receive a gift of say 50,000 from my parent, that won't be taxable. But if I receive the same from a friend, it will be taxable.
Thank you, Mithali. Now, I'll be talking about one of the most important aspects of income from other sources under the Income Tax Act 1961, and that is interest on securities. For government securities such as treasury bills, cash management bills, or state development loans, the interest is fully taxable and there is no deduction, tedious deduction at source. In contrast, for non-government securities, TDS is deducted at 10% under the Section 193. Here, the concept of grossing up becomes very important. Since we receive the net amount after TDS, we must add back the tax deducted to compute the actual taxable income. So as per the formula, let's take an example. If you receive 9,000 after a 10% TDS, your gross taxable income will become rupees 10,000. Now, moving on to another important aspect, and that is letting income from letting of assets. So this income is taxable if letting is not the primary business of the assessee. Specifically, under the Section 56, subsection 2, income from letting out machinery, plant, or furniture is covered. If a building is let out along with machinery, plant, or furniture, and the letting is inseparable, then the entire composite rent is taxed there. Deductions are also allowed for expenses incurred in earning this income, such as repairs, insurance premiums, and depreciation on the assets let out. So, to summarize, interest on securities must always be grossed up where TDS is applicable, and letting of assets is taxable under income from other sources unless it forms the main part of your business.
Thank you, Priyanka. So far we've kind of understood that income from other sources is like a miscellaneous drawer of taxation. Whenever a type of income doesn't fit under the four previous categories of salaries, it usually lands in here in this part. So my part focuses on family pension and a few other miscellaneous incomes, and then we look at deductions allowed under Section 57. Let's start with family pension, which is quite different from a regular pension. A regular pension is received by a retired employee for the work that they did. That's taxed under salaries. But a family pension is received by the legal heir of a deceased employee, like a spouse, child, or dependent parent. The rule is simple. Family pension is fully taxable under income from other sources. However, Section 57 gives a standard deduction to reduce the tax burden. The deduction is whichever is lower of 33% of the family pension or rupees 15,000. Example, let's take an example. Suppose the total family pension received in a year is 60,000 rupees and one third of 60,000 is 20,000. Now, if you compare that to 15,000, the lower would be the latter, that is 15,000. So 15,000 is deducted from the overall family pension and 45,000 becomes taxable. So this deduction is very specific to family pension and you don't need to show any proof of expenses to claim it. Now, talking about other miscellaneous incomes. This head includes some very specific and unusual incomes like forfeited advance. Imagine you're about to sell a piece of land. The buyer gives you 2 lakh rupees in advance, but later backs out of the deal. You get to keep that advance, but now that amount becomes taxable under income from other sources. Earlier, this used to adjust the cost of the property, but now it's directly taxed in the year you receive it. Second, interest on income tax refunds. In the income tax department, if the income tax department delays giving you a refund, they pay you interest on that amount. But while this feels like free money, it is fully taxable under this head. Third one, income from subletting. Suppose you rent a flat from someone for 10,000 a month and then sublet one room to another person for 7,000 a month. That 7,000 is not house property income because you don't own the property. Instead, it's taxed here as income from other sources. There are multiple other miscellaneous incomes like employees' PF contributions that are not deposited on time or the remuneration received by members of parliament. Both of these would be taxed under income from other sources. Next slide, please. Moving on to allowable deductions. Now you can claim, let's talk about deductions you can claim against three incomes. The general rule is you can claim any revenue expense, meaning an expense that's not capital or personal, if it was spent solely and exclusively to earn that income. For instance, if you paid a small fee to collect interest income, that fee can be deducted. But if you spent on something personal or long term, like buying furniture, that's not deductible. There are a few specific deductions that are allowed under Section 57, like you can see collection charges. So if you hired a banker or an agent to help collect interest or dividends, you can deduct the reasonable fee you paid them. Interest on enhanced compensation, this falls under Section 57, subsection 4. So basically, 50% of the interest received is tax-free, no questions asked. You just have to pay tax on the remaining 50%. Lastly, interest on borrowed capital. If you borrow money to invest in shares, the interest you pay on that borrowed amount can be deducted. So this was basically all the allowable deductions that you can claim under Section 57. Moving on to the next part.
Thank you, Adya. I'll be covering Section 58 of the Income Tax Act, which specifies those expenses which are inadmissible or they cannot be claimed as deductions while computing taxable income. Firstly, personal expenses are completely disallowed. Uh, any private, household, or non business expenditure, even if indirectly connected to income, cannot be reduced from taxable income. For example, if an individual incurs travel expenses for a personal holiday, such expenses cannot be claimed even if the trip incidentally generated some income. Secondly, expenses in relations to winning, such as lottery, crossword puzzles, races like horse races, card games, gambling, or betting, are inadmissible. These are taxed at a flat rate of 30%, and this rate is applied on the gross income. No deductions are permitted against such income. For instance, if a person wins 1 lakh rupees in a lottery, tax will be computed on the full 1 lakh without allowing deductions for the cost of lottery ticket or any other expenditure. Also, losses incurred in gambling also cannot be set off against such winnings. Thirdly, payment made outside India without compliance with TDS provisions. When salary, interest, or other payments are made to a non resident or outside India, the payer is required to deduct tax at source. If this obligation is not fulfilled, the related expenditure becomes inadmissible. Fourthly, the Act restricts cash payments exceeding the amount of 10,000 rupees in a single day to a single person. Uh, so, for example, if an assessee makes a cash payment of 15,000 rupees for professional services in one day, that expense will not be permitted as a deduction, even though the service is genuine. And finally, expenses incurred for earning exempt income are also inadmissible. That means if the income itself is not subject to taxation, then any expenditure made to earn such income cannot be used to reduce taxable income. So, thus, Section 58 ensures that only legitimate, compliant, and income related expenses are allowed as deductions, while personal, non compliant, or excessive claims are excluded. Now, I'll be recapping the discussion on income from other sources. This head functions as a residuary category under the Income Tax Act. It ensures that all taxable receipts which do not fall under the heads of salary, house property, business, or profession or capital gains are brought within the scope of taxation. Typical examples would include dividends, family pension, interest on securities, casual income such as lotteries, races, gifts, and compensation amounts. The law provides for certain allowable deductions, like mentioned before, under Section 57, which include collection charges, interest on compensation received, and a standard deduction of one third of family pension of 15,000 rupees, whichever is lower. These deductions are specifically enumerated to allow taxpayers some relief in genuine cases. We also examined the inadmissible expenses under Section 58, which cover personal expenses related to winnings, payments made outside India without TDS, cash payments exceeding 10,000 rupees, and expenses incurred for exempt income. Thank you.
I'm Mr. X, a 63-year-old in the business of software development. For the year 2023 to 24, my business income comes to 7,20,000 rupees. Apart from that, I also earn rent from a few assets I own: a residential house, a car, and a cinema house. The house and the car are rented out to Ariel Limited, together for 60,000 rupees a month, out of which 5,000 rupees is for the car and the rest for the house. These lettings are independent, so they could be rented separately. From this income, I pay 18,000 rupees as municipal tax on the house, and I claim depreciation of 70,000 rupees on it, and 8,000 rupees on the car. I also own a cinema house with a projector and furniture, which I rent to Be Limited, for 2,10,000 rupees per month, with 1,70,000 rupees being the rent of the building. For this property, I spend 26,000 rupees on municipal tax, claim depreciation of 76,000 rupees on the building, and 28,000 rupees on the equipment, and pay a caretaker's salary of 3 lakh rupees. Most of this salary is paid by check, though 1 month's pay of 25,000 rupees was given in cash. Besides these incomes and expenses, I also invest in tax-saving options. I contribute 1,40,000 rupees to my public provident fund and pay a premium of 10,000 rupees on a life insurance policy for my son, taken in May 2023, with a sum assured of 80,000 rupees. So, when you put together my business income, rental income, expenses, depreciation, and these deductions under Section 80C, we can now calculate my net taxable income for the assessment year 2024 to 25.
Mr. X for the assessment year 2024-25. The residential house is let out to Ariel Limited along with the car for 60,000 per month. Out of this, rupees 5,000 relates to the car. Therefore, the rent of the house will be 55,000 per month. The gross annual value of the house would be 55,000 into 12, which amounts to 6,60,000. After deducting the municipal tax of 18,000, the net annual value comes to 6,42,000. Standard deductions under Section 24 at 30% amounts to 1,92,000, bringing the income from house property to 4,49,400. The next step, we have business income, which Alex earns from his software development, which is already given as 7,20,000. The income from other sources includes the car rent and the cinema house rent. The annual car rent amounts to 60,000, and after deducting depreciation of 8,000, the net income comes to 52,000. The total annual rent of the cinema house amounts to 25,20,000. From this, we deduct the municipal tax, which is 26,000. The depreciation on building, which is 76,000. And the depreciation on projector and furniture, which amounts to 28,000. And the caretaker's salary, which is 3 lakhs. However, 1 month's salary of 25,000 was paid in cash, which is disallowed. So, only 2,75,000 is allowed. So, the total available deductions would bring the net income from a cinema house to 21,15,000. Thus, the total income from other sources amounts to 21,67,000. Now, adding up all the heads, the gross total income amounts to 33,36,400. Mr. X contributes 1,40,000 to the PPF. He also pays life insurance premium of 10,000 for his son. But since the policy was taken after April 2012, the deduction is restricted to 10% of the sum assured. 10% of 80,000 is 8,000. So only 8,000 is allowable. Therefore, the total deductions under 80C is 1,40,000 plus 8,000, which amounts to 1,48,000. Therefore, the gross total income minus the deduction would bring the net income to 31,88,400. Therefore, the net taxable income of Mr. X for the assessment year 2024-25 is 31,88,400.